So perhaps you don't care about the recently announced Canon EOS R5 Mark II priced at $42.99, or the Canon EOS R1, Canon's flagship camera, priced at $62.99. Or perhaps you're waiting for the Canon EOS R6 Mark III or an R7 Mark II. Well, if so, stick around because I've got some very exciting information. But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. According to Canon rumors, we've been told that the Canon R6 Mark III is pretty much ready to go. That's right, folks. Remember when I told you back in, I think it was January or February, projecting that the R6 Mark III would be coming sometime in 2024. I didn't have any rumors or any information telling me this. It was just a projection based on where this camera sits in the marketplace, stating that to refresh it every couple of years makes sense because it's very competitive. And we just saw that with the announcement of the Nikon Z6 Mark III. The Nikon Z6 Mark III delivers a stacked sensor. Well, according to Nikon, it's a partially stacked sensor. And what that partially stacked sensor delivers is a much faster readout speed, 2.5 times faster than its predecessor. And it does have some slight issues with noise in low light or dynamic range, but all in all, it's class leading. So that gives Canon a chance to release the Canon EOS R6 Mark III later this year. So what about time frame? Well, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Now, according to Canon rumors, if the R6 Mark III is announced in late 2024, we expect availability to come in 2025. And that's a good point. And you know what? I'm 100% behind what Canon rumors is saying. If we go back 2 years ago, guess what Canon announced on November the 2nd? That's right, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. And at the time, they deeply discounted the Mark I. And for the past 3 or 4 months, we've seen the price of the, I keep wanting to say Nikon Z6 Mark II, but the Canon R6, the Mark II, for $500 off. And we'll get to pricing in a little bit. So Canon is clearing out a bit of inventory, getting ready for a new camera. And we thought it was a little bit strange that Canon would be clearing out inventory with such a big deal on all their cameras, including $500 off the R6 Mark II, but there it is. So a November announcement, and as far as shipping dates, well, we've seen anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks from the announcement before they start shipping units. So that would mean you could actually get your Canon R6 Mark III. I keep wanting to say Nikon Z6 Mark III, apologize, but you could expect to get your camera sometime in late November, but you might have to wait until the middle of December. And we saw this with the 200 to 800 millimeter. It was announced on November the 2nd again. We're starting to see later in the year announcements. And guess what? It didn't start shipping until December the 14th. So I'm predicting an early November announcement with a middle December shipping. The Canon EOS R6 Mark II came with a 24 megapixel sensor, but Nikon really stole the show with their 24 megapixel partly stacked sensor with 2.5 times faster readout speed than its predecessor. And according to Canon rumors, the R6 Mark III is going to have the same resolution, 24 megapixels. But is it going to be the same sensor? Well, it doesn't appear to be that way. I want to read it directly and show you directly what Canon rumors posted when they referred to the sensor. So you can see right here that the R6 Mark III, according to Canon rumors, will have the exact same resolution, but in brackets they say related to the stacked EOS R3 sensor. Related to the R3 stacked sensor. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, Canon rumors obviously has some information, but they've been limited in what they've been told, or there's some sort of loss in translation. I think I know what they're getting at here. The Nikon Z6 Mark III, that was a partially stacked sensor. It wasn't a fully stacked sensor. And I think what Canon's doing here is they're going to take that stacked sensor that came in the R3 and not give us the exact same sensor, make some changes to it, and maybe remove some of the circuitry and giving us a partially stacked sensor like the Nikon Z6 Mark III got. Now there is a chance that it might get the exact same sensor as the original Canon EOS R3, but there's a chance that it might be modified some way, and that's what I'm trying to cut through here. My sources haven't gotten back to me with any information on what type of sensor it's going to be. But this is leading me to believe that, and Canon also realizes that with Nikon, with their Z6 Mark III, with that partially stacked sensor, a much faster readout speed, they know they're going to have to do something here, so we can expect improvements in the sensors. It's going to be the same resolution according to Canon rumors, but it's certainly going to be a whole lot faster in the readout speed. How they do that, we'll get to that in a moment. Now, in terms of the image processor, it's going to have the exact same Digic X image processor that we saw in the R5 Mark II, the R5, and the 1DX Mark III. While the 1DX Mark III, it's probably going to be a slightly modified sensor. What I was trying to get to, it's going to be the same sensor found in the R1 and the R5 Mark II. But that new Digic X accelerator, according to Canon rumors, it's not going to get that. So that's going to be a differentiator from the R6 to the R5, which leads me to believe that the autofocus system is going to be improved but different. So we're probably not going to get that action priority mode, which takes an awful lot of computational power. It takes some AI deep learning capabilities, and that's what the Digic accelerator is really capable of. But what I do think we're going to see in the R6 Mark III is some of the improvements that we see in the R5 Mark II and the R1. And that's good news. And that's when it comes to subject tracking. So if the subject is temporarily obscured by another subject, or if it temporarily moves in and out of the frame, I think the camera's going to do a much better job at tracking it. But if your subject's playing sports, whether it's soccer, volleyball, or basketball, it's not going to have that action priority mode. Canon rumors doesn't specify anything in terms of the autofocus system. They don't have any information. But that's my prediction, and that makes the most sense. By taking out that Digic accelerator, there goes that action priority mode. The R6 Mark III is also going to get a mechanical and electronic shutter, just like the R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1. It is going to get a new EVF, but because it's not going to be supporting eye-controlled autofocus, from what we're gathering here, it's going to have the same EVF found in the Canon EOS R5, the Mark I, not the R3, the Mark I. And I keep calling it the Mark I because a lot of people are calling the Canon EOS R1 the R3 Mark II, although according to Canon rumors, there is supposed to be an R3 Mark II that isn't the end of the line. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. So a whole new EVF. It's going to have 5.79 or 76 million dots, the same as the R5 Mark I. These next few capabilities really grabbed my attention. Improved sensitivity and improved IBIS. Without the accelerator chip, I don't think we're going to have that reduction in IBIS wobble, although the deep learning within this camera will probably minimize it to some degree. But it's that increased sensitivity, and that's another further nod to it getting some sort of stacked sensor, which would be really great news because faster readout speed reduces rolling shutter and allows us to capture shots that are not just so great in studio, but it's really great for sports and fast action type work, expanding the role of the camera. But there's something else that this camera gets. Now, the Nikon Z6 Mark II and the Z6 Mark III have dual card slots, but one of those card slots is a CF Express Type B card slot. The other one being a UHS-2 card slot capable of V90 and V60 speeds. And this is a really significant improvement. And the price per gigabyte, you can actually get CF Express Type B cards that are actually cheaper than V90 and V60 cards. You're looking at, I think, around $79.99 for a 512 gigabyte card. That's Angelbird. Sometimes that's the sale price. They'll go up to about $129. 1 terabytes are under $200 quite often, and 2 terabytes, I've seen them for under $500. With sustained write speeds of 1.48 gigabytes per second, 1.3 gigabytes per second, that's sustained write speed whether the card's empty or full. And sustained read speeds, well, they're up there as well. So getting content off the cards or actually even transcoding on the cards are more than possible. So that's really big news. But now let's turn our attention to the video specifications. And this is where we get some bold improvements. The Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Mark I can do 4K video up to 120 frames per second. The R6 Mark III, well, it can now also do 4K up to 120 frames per second. So a big thanks to Nikon for starting to bring this down. That was one of the best-in-class capabilities of the Nikon Z6 Mark III. But like the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, it's going to be able to do up to 240 frames per second. That's right, 240 frames per second. That's in 1080, not 4K. That's really a big deal. Now, have I left anything out? Okay, so the body is going to be slightly heavier than the previous one. I don't think it's going to be anything like 150 grams. And in terms of the LCD, it's going to be the exact same LCD. But the real question is, I've been talking about specs for the last, 5 to 8 minutes here. The real question is this going to be is it going to provide you with any additional value? Well, to really sum up, where the R6 Mark III is going to be able to deliver improvements over the Mark II and the Mark I, and if you have the Mark I, this is a huge update. You're going to see a lot faster readout speed. You're going to see a lot faster throughput. You're going to be able to, with that CF Express Type B card, it indicates to me that Canon's going to really push the frame rates on this camera. The Mark II could already do 40 frames per second raw. I'm really curious to know what Canon does here. That CF Express Type B card, Canon's putting that in there for a reason, and one of the reasons is the Nikon Z6 Mark III and the Z6 Mark II. But they're also doing it because I get a sense they're really going to increase the throughput here. Now, to be able to do 4K up to 120 frames per second, yes, you do need a CF Express Type B card slot. But I've been shooting for 4 years with a Canon EOS R5, and one thing I can tell you is that when it comes to shooting stills, especially when your files are over 50 megabytes each, you're shooting RAW, and you're shooting RAW in JPEG or HEIF at the same time, as a photographer, you're going to need and take advantage of that CF Express Type B card long before it's needed for video. And that's a really big deal, especially if you're shooting sports and wildlife. You get out there, you shoot, and you're looking at thousands of images you have to get through to be able to pull them off the card really quickly or even edit them while they're on the card. That's what a CF Express Type B card really allows you to do. And if you're thinking editing on the card is a really silly thing, it isn't. Whenever I go shooting run and gun, here I have a Ninja 5, so I end up with Apple ProRes 422. But when I'm shooting run and gun, there is no capability, even in the R5 Mark II, to be able to do Apple ProRes. So I have to transcode, and I always transcode on the card, and it's fast, it's quick, it's able to do it. It's got a very fast read speed. And then what I do once I've transcoded it, then I only import into the computer the actual segments of the clips that I actually want. It reduces waste. So being able to transcode actually on the CF Express Type B card itself, it saves me an awful lot of time. I don't have to copy it off to transcode. That's a really big deal. And these CF Express Type B cards, especially the ones by Angelbird, they have a really high PE, so you can do that kind of thing and not wear them down. I've been doing it for years, and I've yet to have an Angelbird card fail on me because I've used it too much. Okay, so have I left anything else out? Oh, yeah, one other thing I should mention too in terms of, is the R6 Mark III going to be worth it? And that really, if we get a stacked sensor, what that means is we're going to have significantly less noise, and that's a really big deal. The the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, when shooting at ISOs of 3200 and even 12,800, has shown significantly less noise. And that's a really big deal. Now, if Canon gives us the same stacked sensor or a slightly improved sensor that's found in the R3, some minor adjustments, that would make Canon, once again, best in class. Because remember, the Z6 Mark III gets a partially stacked sensor, and while it has that faster readout speed, the dynamic range takes a bit of a hit. It takes a hit over the predecessor, the Nikon Z6 Mark II. So this is one area where Canon could, kind of park that cripple hammer and say, okay, you know what? Nikon gave you a partially stacked sensor. We're going to give you a fully stacked sensor. But that might do something to the price. The Sony a7 IV sells for $24.99. The Nikon Z6 Mark III sells for also that same price point. I'm not sure what Canon's going to do with the price. They really shocked us by going $42.99 on the R5 Mark II. And while the autofocus system is greatly improved over what we see in the Nikon Z8 and the R5 Mark II, that's almost enough to justify the price point. I was surprised by that big price jump. So if Canon does give us a stacked sensor, a fully stacked sensor in the R6 Mark III, I wouldn't be surprised if they finally push past that $2,500 price point. So do get ready for that. But I also want to address the fear of missing out, the FOMO here. Take a look at the R6 Mark II. It's currently $200 off, and for the past 3 or 4 months, it's actually been $500 off. So I necessarily wouldn't go out and purchase it right now, but I would take a look at the R6, the Mark II, over the next couple of months. It's going to go on sale again. I can rest assured, if not this summer, it's going to happen by Black Friday. You'll see it go on sale again for $500 off. We've seen the prices readjust after Canon announced the R5 Mark II, but it'll go on sale again, and it's still a very capable camera. But if we do get any sort of stacked sensor with that faster readout speed, That's bold. 4K 120 frames per second, that's bold. And 240 frames per second in 1080. However, also take a look at the Nikon Z6 Mark III. It's currently best in class, and I think it's a terrific camera. It's a very good camera. It's really great to see all the cameras in this segment. Now, as far as Sony's concerned, I wouldn't buy the A7 IV necessarily right away unless you're really happy with the specs. We just got a refresh from Nikon. We're getting a refresh from Canon, and Sony's expected to refresh the Sony A7 V in 2025. So just so that you're aware, and if you do happen to use the affiliate links I have listed in the comment section down below, dozens of cameras on sale by Nikon and Canon. Just to let you know, I do get a small commission back if you happen to purchase anything. But a big thanks to you, because those ads that you see YouTube put up, I get very little from that. The bulk of what makes this channel possible, the bulk of what really allows this channel to thrive and survive, is you guys using my pre-order and affiliate links. So a big thanks to you, and have yourself a great weekend. I wasn't expecting this information to come out. I'm a little bit dehydrated. I'm a little bit hungry. I just had my rehab session, so my body's really sore. So that's partially one of the reasons why I keep wanting to interchange the Nikon Z6 Mark III with a Canon EOS R6 Mark III. They both have 6s, they both have Mark IIIs, you can see that. Anyhow, enough of me rambling. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon.